everybody. My name is Mr. Know-It-All. You may recognize me as your local meteorologist. I've decided that meteorology wasn't helping me make ends meet. And by that I mean it wasn't helping me score any hot chicks. Now, even the best professors have a hard time hitting that 100% passing rate. So today I'm here with one of Professor Houston's students, Jordan Hunter, and we're going to show him a little bit of anatomy and get him ready for his final.
Man, this stuff's for nerds. They need a big daddy major at this school.
You don't need a degree to be an egotistical chump. But let me enlighten you as to why this stuff might be important. Today, we're going to be talking about the respiratory and the cardiovascular system, which are both going to be key topics on your final exam, all right? All right, let's start. Let's make our way from the outside in. So we're going to start with the respiratory system, and this pretty much involves gas transfer, and respiration. So breathing in, breathing out, and as you do that, these gases are going to diffuse into your alveoli, and from there will be diffusing into the bloodstream, oxygen in, carbon dioxide out. This also helps to balance out the pH level of your blood, the basic and acidity, because as you expel carbon dioxide, it lowers the acidity of your blood.
Could you explain what alveoli are?
The alveoli are small sacs in your lungs. There's a magnified image right there, and that is where the gas transfer is going to take place. The carbon dioxide is going to diffuse out, oxygen is going to diffuse in. So this also helps with blood pressure regulation, and also helps when you're trying to drop rocks in the bowl.
That's why I never order bagels on planes. Those things come out like rocks.
Okay, so for review, you inhale oxygen, it's going to diffuse, you're going to go through your upper respiratory tract, then through your lower respiratory tract, diffuse into your bloodstream, and this is also going to help regulate the blood pressure, which aids with pumping the blood back up, which we will be talking about in the next part of this review. Can you explain that in anatomical terms? You're allowed to use the diagrams if you need to.
Alright, so the air enters through your nose into your larynx, and then from the trachea to your lungs.
All right, and do you remember where that gas diffusion takes place?
The alveoli.
Correct. Okay, now just to examine this on a more physical level, there's two gas laws that you should consider when talking about the respiratory system. There's the Dalton's gas law and the ideal gas law. Now, Dalton's gas law says that total pressure of the gas in a system is going to be equal to the pressures, the subsequent pressures of this other gases in that system. So it's the sum of all those smaller pressures is going to make up the total pressure in your thoracic cavity. The ideal gas law is a formula that relates pressure to volume. So if you have an increase in pressure, you have to decrease the volume, and vice versa. They're in proportionate to each other.
I think I learned that in chemistry. If you want to reduce pressure in a system, you need to increase the volume.
That's pretty good. So if you apply that to your thoracic cavity, the diaphragm helps increase your volume, which decreases the pressure of the gases in there. So knowing that your lungs help with respiration or managing ventilation and gas transfer, let's move on to the heart and see what happens with all this newly gained oxygen.
This doesn't look like a heart emoji at all.
That's because your heart is more of a beating organ than a symbol of love. But back to the lecture. With this, all this oxygenated blood, we now have to pump that through the body, which will be governed by a pressure gradient, similar to what happens in the respiratory system. And the reason we did that is because blood is actually viscous. It has a viscosity, which means that it has a resistance to flow.
So pumping blood is kind of like watching syrup pour onto my pancakes.
Sort of, but blood is not as thick, so it doesn't flow as slowly. Now, with this in mind, it's also important to know the osmolarity of the blood is what regulates the diffusion of particles in and out, and that's what maintains its viscosity. It keeps the blood from absorbing too many nutrients, water, and particles, and from losing too much. So, now that we know that the blood is viscous, we can go back to this pressure gradient of pumping blood throughout the body. which organs or which blood vessels do you think pump the blood from your heart?
Well, there's arteries, veins, capillaries. Arteries are the strongest, so I'm gonna go with those. They should be pumping oxygenated blood.
See, you know anatomy, you just don't know that you know. All right, now there's a common pathway for how the blood travels through your body. Starts with the heart, transfers to your arteries, which is then pumped through the arterioles and into the capillaries. I like to think of the capillaries as the business part of the blood pathway because this is where hormones, waste, and nutrients are transferred between your blood and the tissue fluid.
So we got a heart, arteries, arterioles, which are smaller arteries,
Yes.
capillaries, and then all that's left is veins.
That's right. So your veins are going to help that blood reach out to the peripheral muscles and tissues of your body. And it's important to note that while this blood is now deoxygenated, that doesn't mean that it's completely deprived of oxygen. It just has less oxygen than before. So now this blood has to travel back up to the heart via a mechanism called venous return, which is similar to the pressure gradient that we've been talking about. The respiratory system and the skeletal system both help to pump this blood back up.
Oh, so it's like a pressure gradient, similar to the respiratory system.
That is correct. So that is how both of these systems simultaneously affect the flow of blood. Now, what else do these systems do jointly to help circulation?
They both allow gas diffusion, which to take place between the blood and surrounding tissues.
Correct. So remember, this gradient works from high pressure to low pressure. The respiratory system and the circulatory system both help with diffusion of gases in the body and the flow of blood throughout the body.
Hey, you know what? This stuff is actually kind of cool. I think I'm actually going to try on the final exam this time.
All right, so I got a picture that's going to show us both the systems working together. Only shows the upper extremity, even some extra details about the intestines, your liver, and your stomach. But you can see up here in your lungs, there's blue and red color, red meaning oxygenated, blue meaning deoxygenated. And remember before you mentioned the oxygenated blood is pumped from the greater arterioles up here. That's why it's colored red, obviously. Well, when it's deoxygenated, it has to pour in from the superior vena cava, and this is into the right side of the blood. So once it fills up there, it's going to be pumped through the pulmonary artery, and that's going to take it through the lungs, get oxygenated through those alveoli. It's going to come back through the pulmonary veins and fill the left side of the heart, and upon filling up that side is where it gets pumped out through the arteries like we mentioned before. And this all happens unconsciously. This is happening many times throughout the day. You don't feel it. You know it's happening because you're still alive, but you don't have to voluntarily control it, unless of course you stop breathing.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, and this is just a outro for the video. I wanted to say thank you, Professor Houston, for a great semester. You are honestly one of my favorite professors that I've had. I also think that we couldn't have had better timing for this video. My brother has just graduated from high school this month, and he will be attending Kent State next fall. So I think this is a good video to help get him into the rhythm. And hopefully I will see you around the Mac building next semester.